Hello and welcome to Get to Know Them podcast. This is a podcast in which I'm gonna talk with some of the world's highest performers in order to learn more about them. I'm your host, Cameron Shuligoy. I hope you enjoy. Hi, who do we get to know today?
My name's Grace Alexander, and I am a pro triathlete living in Greenville, South Carolina.
Hi, Grace. It's very nice to meet you. You said that you're a professional triathlete, and that immediately sparked my interest. Can you tell me, how did you get into triathlon in the first place?
So I always kind of knew about the sport at a pretty young age. I did a Iron Kids race when I was like 12, I think. Never really got super serious into it, just dabbled in it through middle school, high school, college, would do like a local sprint try maybe once a year. But yeah, I never really trained for it. I was always doing like high school team sports. I did like my summer league swim team, which is, just a neighborhood pool during the summer. And then I actually ran year round in middle school before going to high school where I did cross country swimming and track and then just swam in college. So I guess training that way always made it kind of easy to just jump into a triathlon during the summer if I wanted to. But after college, I didn't really do anything for like 2 years. Didn't really have, for the first time in my life, like any organized sport, and it wasn't really going down a good path for me. So after about a year and a half, 2 years, I decided to start running again and just trying to get in shape. And it was so hard to even run like 3 miles at the time because I had taken so long off. But I ended up doing a half marathon in like 2016, I think. And then when I completed that, I was like, all right, I'll sign up for a triathlon, and did that in 2016 also. And yeah, then it just like sparked a interest and became more and more competitive in it. And then eventually got to the point where I qualified for my pro card. And here we are.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I wanted to ask you about your professional license that you earned. But when I was doing a bit of research about you, I noticed that you achieved quite a bit of success even before you qualified for the professional card, when you were racing still as an age grouper. Do you know what I have in mind?
I'm going to assume you're thinking about the 70.3 Gulf Coast in
Yeah,
2020.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of the race that made me realize like I should jump into the pro field. Because before that, I had actually qualified for my pro card in 2018 at the St. Anthony's Triathlon, which is an Olympic distance race, non-draft legal in Florida that has a pro field. But I was an age group at the time, and I qualified under one of USAT qualification criteria for my pro license then. But realistically, looking at my times versus the pros, I realized there was quite a gap, and I would probably be bringing up the rear of the races. So I don't really like racing in that way. So I figured I would develop a little bit more as an athlete and see if I could get to the point where I was more competitive in the pro field. And so when I raced in 2020 at the Gulf Coast 70.3, I ended up winning overall men and female, which was the first time that's ever happened in an Ironman race. And that kind of gave me the confidence I needed to take my pro card the next year.
So you said that you actually qualified for the pro card 2 times. Was this success the reason why you decided to become a professional then the second time? And was this a difficult decision, or did you immediately, when you met the criteria, thought to yourself, there's no way I'm gonna miss it for the second time, I'm going and becoming a professional?
Um, it was a pretty easy decision, I guess, at that point in 2020, because I wasn't ever planning to go like full-time pro. I was still in grad school at the time and working two part-time jobs. So there wasn't a lot of pressure for me to like succeed as a pro. I just figured, I'm at this level where I feel like I could compete against other professional females, and it would probably challenge me and make me better in the future to compete against these women. So I was like, I'll jump in the pro field and see where I'm at. But because I'm still like working and having being in grad school, there's no real pressure. I didn't feel like I had to win races or even be in the money to be okay. So it was more of just like we'll see where this goes if I enjoy it, kind of low pressure. But I wasn't super stressed about not qualifying again. I thought like if I wanted to delay it another year, there's multiple ways to qualify, and I was fairly confident that I could qualify again if I wanted to. So I just jumped in 2021 to the pro field, and I was happy with that decision.
And would you say, looking at it now, that you made the right decision, and are you satisfied with it? Because when I was looking at your results, I saw that you achieved some pretty respectable results, I would say. Both in Ironman races, you qualified for the 70.3 World Championships, you competed in the PTO US Open, and I would say that you had quite a successful career, at least so far. Are you satisfied with what you've achieved?
I mean, I don't think anyone who's competitive in a sport is going to be completely satisfied. I mean, you even listen to like Taylor Knibb now, and after a phenomenal performance, she's like, I could still do better. So, it kind of just trickles down to like lower pros, I guess, where it's like we have even more to figure out and accomplish. So I'm very like proud of the success and like growth that I've had in the sport, but definitely not satisfied. And I think there's definitely a lot more to come and more potential there. And it's always taken me a while to develop my skills. I've never been like just a talent or a phenom out of the block. It's always been a few years of work before that my performance really improves and shows. So, I'm still working towards that. And once I feel like I've either plateaued or just don't enjoy the sport as much as I used to, then I'll probably step away. But for now, I have no plans of doing that. So I'm still definitely hungry in the sport, but also proud of how far I've come.
Yeah, that's very nice to hear. And if you would have to think about it and choose one result or one thing that you're most proud of, which one would you choose?
Um, I would probably say Augusta 2022. That was my first pro win at Augusta 70.3. And I'm not necessarily proud of it because I won, but I'm proud of the effort that I put into that. And there's two races this year that I would probably say are about equal to that. Mont Tremblant 70.3 and Chattanooga 70.3 this year, where it's more so crossing the finish line and feeling proud of your ability to stay focused and be for 4.5 hours in this mental space of like focus and working hard, but being okay with that. So I think all those performances and races that I just listed are what I'm most proud of because I felt like at the finish line, I had pushed from start to finish. So yeah, for me, it's not about necessarily the place, more the effort.
Yeah, I completely understand that because the finishing position is also not completely in your control. If you're competing against 20 of the best athletes in the world and you finish 21st, that might be on paper a very bad performance, but you gave it all and you're effectively 21st in the world, but
Yeah.
you can also win a race and perform very badly. But if you have basically no competition, then it's a question which performance means more. But I'm wondering, because you said that you're always 100% in a race and you stay focused and engaged. And I'm wondering, what are you thinking about during a race? And basically, how do you stay focused? And what do you do if you start seeing that your mind is shifting somewhere else?
Yeah. So I will say that not every race I feel like I am 100% focused. And even within races that I am proud of, even then, it's really hard to stay completely focused for that long. I mean, inevitably in half Ironmans, and I've never done a full Ironman, but I would imagine it's even harder to do it for that duration. But typically I'm thinking about that moment and what I can do in that moment to be better, or at least that's my goal. It's really easy to want to think about like the next discipline or transition, or, I'm only 20 miles into the bike. I still have like 30 more to go. But those thoughts aren't really super helpful. So I've been working with a mental performance coach this year, and she's been great in helping me learn how to get the mind back into a place that's really helpful in the race and not like drift away to negative thoughts, and just bring it back to things on the bike that help me focus, or things on the run that help me focus, like my breath or my cadence, and little things that might vary for some people what helps for them. But that's typically what I'm trying to focus on. Uh, yeah, it's really hard to always focus on that, but it's always the goal.
Yeah, that's very nice. And I think that it's also very nice and very, I would say, professional that you started working with a mental coach, because I think that in triathlons, especially in longer distance triathlons, a lot of it comes down to not just physical, but also mental fitness. And I think that a lot of people are struggling in this aspect. They maybe have the power and the fitness in general to compete at the highest level, but they just don't have the correct mindset.
Yeah. Um, you can be able to push as many watts as you can, but if mentally you're just in a dark place, the body responds to what the mind is thinking. So you might be as fit as you can be, but if, you're struggling to want to do it, or you have a lot of other things on your mind, that's going to affect your performance. So bringing it back into what you can control in that moment, I think, is really helpful, and what separates some of the top athletes from those that are, more mid pack or lower pack. And I think something that's become more accepted and used in more recent years are like mental performance coaches or therapists, just helping you get through your thoughts and find a more productive path forward.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. And you mentioned already that you go through a lot of struggles during a race. And I'm wondering what keeps you going, because one thing is knowing that you have to focus on this moment and the things that you have to do, but you have to have a reason why to do it, some motivation. And I'm wondering what your reason is, or what your motivation is.
I think there's a few for sure. Number one, I think I would be filled with some deep regret if I ever DNF'd or quit just because like I didn't want to, or I was tired, or just fatigued. I don't think that's really a good reason to quit. And we put in so many hours of training, and I always think back to the 4 or 5 hour rides and bricks that I do every week. And it's like, if I can do that week after week, I can definitely do a race and finish it, even if it's not my best. Like, do do the best that you can do that day. It might not be my best overall result, but that's again where it's like, what can I do in this moment to control my effort to be my best on the day? But other motivation is knowing that in past races, sometimes like you go through these dark spots, but then you feel better like 10 minutes later. A lot of that has to do with nutrition. I feel like when you're starting to run low, you get hangry and you just don't want to be doing anything anymore. So I'll typically top off on some nutrition if I start feeling like dark thoughts. And usually within 10 to 15 minutes, I'll feel better. And you just go through the ebbs and flows of racing. And if the bike doesn't feel good, sometimes the run feels great. So you got to at least make it to the run. And then if the beginning of the run doesn't feel great, maybe mile 8 will feel better. So you just run the mile you're in, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. And one more thought about it. Even if your running doesn't feel great, maybe the opponents or other people's run feels even worse. So that might also be something to think about.
Yeah, that definitely, if that helps you think about if you're suffering, then so is everyone else. But sometimes that can also lead you down to thinking like, what if they feel better? So I try not to think about them.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah. You mentioned some things about your training, and I'm wondering which are your favorite training sessions and which workouts do you hate the most?
My favorite ones are definitely like tempo runs. Not necessarily because I like look forward to them, but it's mostly the feeling afterwards of like success and the endorphin rush you get. Also, since running is my weakest discipline, I find it very fun to challenge my run because I know that's how I'm going to get better. So those are probably my favorite. And my least favorite would probably be like a bunch of 200s swimming, like threshold. For some reason, 200s are just my nemesis. I don't mind hundreds. I don't mind 300s, but 200s are just, there's something about them. Or VO2 on the bike is really tough, especially if you're indoors. That's a tough mental game for me.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I find it especially interesting because you mentioned before that you basically began your career, or yeah, let's say career in sports as a runner, but now you said that running is your weakest discipline. How does that go hand in hand?
I always say that I think being horizontal for 4 years in college when I swam just ruined my run form. But I ran year round in middle school. So I don't know if, before puberty, it's just your body's different. And then now that, I've matured and stuff, just things have been, harder on the running front. But I mean, I'm faster now than I was in middle school. So it's not like I'm not as fast, but I I think me doing year round running in middle school was just such a long time ago that it didn't necessarily transfer to now as well as swimming had.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that's also a good point. And I think that being a better swimmer is actually more of an advantage than being a better runner because I'm the complete opposite. I am a very good runner, I would say, at least for my level that I'm competing at, but I'm a very lousy swimmer. And if you're a bad swimmer, swimming is there's a lot of technique involved. And if you don't nail the technique, then you can't improve. And you also fall back in the races very quickly. So you're basically spending the whole race alone. And because you're a good swimmer, you stay in touch with other competitors for a longer time in the races. And I think that gives you a lot of advantage, at least in the pro field. Are my assumptions correct or am I completely wrong?
You're somewhat correct. I think it is an aspect of, the grass is always greener because I think having a run background or being a strong runner would be really nice. Because being a strong swimmer, yes, I'm in the front pack at the beginning and I have more opportunity to hang on to the bike. But what's not fun is knowing that, or not knowing, but potentially coming out of the water is the top place that I'm going to be all day. And I'm just basically racing scared for 4 hours after that. Versus, if you're Tamara Jewett or someone who's a phenomenal runner, she's catching people throughout the race. And so that's got to be really mentally more fun, I think, to know that you're just picking people off. But there's definitely an advantage to being a swimmer because you do get, more potential to be in a good bike group and you get um, just the rush of being in the lead from the beginning.
Yeah, I understand this perspective, and I guess that you can look at it from both ends, and
Mhm.
both ends make sense. So it's just a matter of which end you're focused on. And
Yeah.
what would you say is your goal in triathlon, or the one thing that you want to achieve?
Um, I have a lot of like little goals, I would say. Now, like main goals or like the goal kind of sits in the back of my mind, and it's such like an out there goal that I don't really think about it a lot, but it's something that drives me a lot throughout my like year to year training because I use the smaller goals as like check ins to reach that main goal. And I mean, I guess the main goal would be to be one of the most competitive triathletes in the pro field, showing up to races and being in contention for the lead or the win consistently is something that I hope to achieve. But again, I'm so proud of where I've gotten to so far that I think that's really helped me stay more grounded and not worry so much about reaching that end goal super quickly, but enjoying the process and the journey and the little wins. And those little wins have been getting on the podium, getting a PR on the run after at the end of the race, or a new power record on the bike. So lots of goals to keep me motivated. And ultimately, the top goal is going to be a very competitive pro female.
Yeah, awesome. That's a great goal to have, and I wish you all the best in achieving it.
Thank you.
You mentioned at the beginning that you were working part-time besides being a professional triathlete. And I'm wondering, are you still working now, or are you all in on being a triathlete?
So I was in grad school for my master's on exercise and health science. And I was working as a research assistant in a nutritional study at the time, and then also coaching like a year-round team. And after that, I decided to start my own coaching business. So I do that now. I've been coaching for 3 or 4 years for like triathletes through Training Peaks. But I've been coaching summer league swim teams, year-round swim teams, master swim teams since I was 17. So yeah, I'm coaching now, mostly virtually and racing. So those are my two main gigs.
Okay, that's awesome. And
Mhm.
that's also a nice segue into the next segment that is not so much triathlon related, but more just life in general. Because I'm wondering, besides triathlon and besides coaching, which other things do you do and find happiness in?
Well, those honestly take up most of my time now, but there are other things that I enjoy doing that I'll probably dabble in more during like the off season, when I have more flexibility and time to do activities like hiking or going camping. Those are probably some of the other activities that my fiance has gotten me into. And we like to go up to like about an hour north of us, Asheville. It has some really nice mountain biking, camping, trail running, stuff like that. But honestly, besides those few things, I'm trying to think of other things that I dabble in now. There was definitely more before I started triathlon, but I think it's just taken over a good focus that it's kind of those have taken a back seat. I enjoy cooking. There's one. Whether it's just meals or baking. I like not knowing if something is a recipe or like a real meal, and then just Googling like 2 or 3 ingredients and seeing if someone's come up with a recipe and kind of making it my own from there. So I like to be a creative cook, I'll say.
Yeah, that's nice. That's very interesting. And being a good and creative cook also helps with your triathlon career because I can imagine that triathletes are eating a whole lot of food.
Oh, definitely. I mean, what you put in your body is so important. And that's another, when I did the research and nutrition, that kind of sparked my interest towards caring more about what I put in my body. So finding good, nutritious meals has become very important. And it's been fun to be creative with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what is something that you wanted to do for a long time but just haven't done it yet?
Oh, man. Um, it would probably be really cool to, like, I'm trying to think, travel related. I've done a lot of cool stuff with that. um, you've got me stuck. I feel very lucky to kind of be stuck with this question because I've accomplished or like done so many fun things. But I mean, I guess, starting a family will be fun one day, but that's probably a little bit down the line. Yeah, I guess we'll go with that.
Okay, that's nice. And I also think that not having an answer to this question is basically the best answer you can give because it means that everything you want to do, you just do it and you don't keep these things in your bucket list and you maybe never get to actually experience them.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people, work all of their life and just can't wait for retirement when they're like 60, 70 years old to accomplish all their like fun dreams. But then at that point, you might have gone through some sickness or something and you don't know. So I feel lucky to be able to knock that all out as I'm young and healthy, and then I'll focus on maybe a more normal life afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree.
Yeah.
But if I return to the topic of food a bit, what is your favorite meal? Or if you would have to only eat one meal for the rest of your life, which one would it be?
One meal for the rest of my life. I don't know if I could even do that, but something that I've really enjoyed cooking recently has been homemade chicken nuggets with fries. And it's kind of like my healthy take on it, where it's just uh, the flour I use is like almond flour and coconut flour, and I'll fry them up in little nugget shapes, and then really good like crunchy fries. We have like a special what are they called, pan, I guess, that we use in the oven that makes the fries really crispy, and you can do it without like deep frying. So those meals kind of like remind me of my childhood, but they're also nutritious. So that's probably one of my favorites so far. Or I also make some chicken parm. So that's been a top favorite here too.
Okay, yeah, sounds great. And what is your guilty pleasure?
Chocolate or wine. I
Or
don't know.
both at the same time?
Oh, definitely. I don't really feel guilty when I eat them necessarily, but it's definitely like something that I enjoy. And of course, like a week or two leading into a race, I'll kind of scale back on it. But a really good glass of wine I like to have like while I'm cooking, with maybe some cheese and crackers, and then a little piece of chocolate afterwards, or a little like chocolate ice cream. I'm definitely a chocolate person though.
Okay, that's awesome. Which are the top three songs on your playlist?
Oh no. So I'm pretty much stuck listening to the same songs that I listened to in college and high school. And I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, which, if you don't know, is a very like hip hop centric, like rap area. Um, and I listen to a lot of like Ti and Future and Lil Wayne. Those are usually the songs or artists that will get me through my tough training sessions. So um, anything by them really is what I'm probably listening to.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great choice, especially for the harder workouts, as you said.
Okay, because I'm still stuck on Pandora for my music, because they've really curated an algorithm for my music taste. So every time I go to Spotify, I feel like they don't know me well enough yet, and so I'm just consistently using Pandora for my music and then Spotify for podcasts.
Yeah, no, that's nice. Why change something that works, right?
Exactly.
So, what is one thing that annoys you or makes you angry?
Um, People that are unaware of their surroundings. uh I think, like, especially with like cell phones and stuff, of course, like as a cyclist, people driving on cell phones just really grinds my gears. It just makes me feel like like it's just not safe, and you can't be aware of your surroundings when you're paying attention to your phone. And then people like walking on the street like on their phone and just being unaware that there's other people around kind of bothers me. And I think that's because of my, like, when you're training and stuff, you're almost hyper aware of everything. So I could probably be a little more nice or empathetic towards people, but sometimes I let the frustration get the best of me, and I'll let people know that they need to pay attention.
Yeah, no, I completely understand because the same thing bothers me. And also, a couple other people that I was talking to mentioned the same thing. So, you're definitely not alone.
Oh,
So, you
good,
don't have to feel that bad about it.
good. Maybe it's a triathlete thing or an athlete thing, just being very hyper aware of what's going on around you.
Yeah, but you have to be because there are already a lot of accidents and we don't need any more of them, especially for stupid reasons.
Exactly. I agree with that.
If you could be a professional athlete in another sport, just not triathlon, which sport would you choose?
probably choose one that you can make more money. uh, Tennis would be cool. I think that that's a fun one. I don't play tennis at all, but I think it takes a lot of practice and skill, and I respect people that have to go work really hard at their craft to be good at it. And I think tennis players do that. One of the most impressive, I guess it's a professional sport. It's in the Olympics, but synchronized swimming, I feel like, is the most challenging sport there is, because you're having to remember your routine while you're like hypoxic underwater and be aware of your surroundings, because you're usually with a bunch of other women or men around you doing these crazy things in the water. And as a swimmer, I know how hard it is to, like, do things in the water, holding your breath and that stuff. So I feel like I have a lot of respect for synchronized swimmers, even though it's not like a mainstream popular sport.
Yeah, that's a very interesting answer, but you explained it also very well. So I have no option but to agree with it, especially as somebody who struggles with swimming a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm happy that I grew up in the water a little bit, because learning technique and swimming as an adult, and as a coach that has given swim lessons, I can just see the frustration on adults' faces, and you just want to like tell them it's going to be okay. And you just have to like keep working at it year after year, because ultimately that's what we did as children growing up. But it's a lot harder to do that as an adult, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And before we wrap up this podcast, I have just one more question for you. And it is the question that I let my previous guest on the podcast choose for the next guest on the show. And my previous guest was Sarah Schoenfelder. She's a professional triathlete from Germany. And she wants to know, what is your favorite post-race meal?
Probably a steak and potatoes. Number one, because it tastes good, but number two, because I think it has a lot of nutrients that you need after racing for that long and that hard, with all the protein, carbs, and micronutrients in there. So I'll go with that. Steak, potatoes, and then maybe some ice cream to end the day.
Okay, that's a very nice answer. And what is your question for the next guest on the show?
We can go kind of deep with this. And I would like to know, how will you know when to step away from triathlon?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. And I can't wait to hear the answer.
Yeah, I can't either.
Well, it was a pleasure talking to you, Grace. Thank you for saying yes, for coming on the show, for talking to me. And I'm wondering, if people want to learn more about you, follow you, support you, maybe even reach out for coaching, where can people find you?
Probably Instagram is the best. I have my main page, which is grace.alexander92. And then my coaching account is Try with Grace. And then I also have a website, trywithgrace.com. And so you can either just message me on Instagram, or there's an email on the website.
Okay, that's great. I'm going to put the links into the show notes so people are going to find it more easily.
Thank you.
But like I said, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for taking your time, sharing your story, and I wish you all the best in your career.
Thank you. I enjoyed our chat.